The first time she saw him, he was standing alone in the observation chamber, hands clasped behind his back, staring through the glass into the endless scatter of stars. His uniform was black, unadorned except for a patch at the shoulder, a simple blue emblem shaped like a stylized flame. The alien attendants whispered about him as if he were a weapon unshackled too early. Even the guards of the Ardent Council, who had been trained to face planetary bombardments without blinking, kept their distance. He didn't seem to notice, or maybe he just didn't care. To Commander Lysara of the Ardent Fleet, the human was disappointing. She had expected a monster. The way her tutors had described the species, humanity was supposed to be chaos given form, feral, impulsive, a threat to any stable civilization. Yet here he was, quiet and still, looking like any other soft-bodied mammal from a low-gravity world. No claws, no armor, just a tired face and eyes that carried the kind of calm that made people uneasy. She was assigned as his liaison, translator, interrogator, diplomat, or babysitter, depending on which rumor one listened to. Her orders were simple: learn what she could about him, and more importantly, about what humans were really capable of. "Human," she said, tasting the strange word as she entered the chamber. "That is what you call yourself, yes?" He didn't turn around immediately. The word hung between them like something alive. When he finally glanced over his shoulder, his expression was unreadable. "That's right," he said, voice low and even. "And you are?" "Commander Lysara," she replied, straightening instinctively. "You will address me by rank." He gave a small smile, not mocking, but somehow knowing. "Sure thing, Commander." It wasn't the answer she expected. No alien ever spoke to her with that tone. There was no deference, no fear, just a quiet amusement that unsettled her. She walked closer, talons clicking against the metal floor. The observation glass reflected the faint glow of nebulae beyond, painting them both in shifting blues and silvers. "You were captured during the border skirmish on Terran's moon," she began. "Our analysts say your fleet was destroyed. Yet you were found alive, without a ship, without armor, drifting in the vacuum." He looked back at the stars. "Not destroyed. We made sure of that." Lysara frowned. "There were no survivors." He didn't answer. Instead, he raised one hand, pressing it gently against the transparent wall. His breath fogged the glass for a moment, as though he were thinking about something very far away. "You ever wonder," he said softly, "what happens when you push something too far? When you keep cornering it until it stops running?" Lysara blinked. "What are you talking about?" He turned then, fully facing her. For the first time she saw his eyes, gray but not cold. They burned with something she couldn't define. "That's what your council did. You pushed. You prodded. You studied. You called us primitives. You bombed our colonies and expected us to break. But we didn't. We adapted. That's what a human is." Her crest feathers flicked in irritation. "Adaptation is a biological response, not a weapon." "Not when we do it," he said. There was no threat in his voice, yet she felt her pulse rise. Something about the way he spoke made it sound less like pride and more like warning. She drew in a slow breath, steadying herself. "If you intend to frighten me, human, you'll find I'm not easily—" He stepped forward once, not aggressively, but with enough presence to make her words falter. "I'm not trying to frighten you, Commander," he said. "I'm trying to explain." She hesitated, unsure if she should call for the guards, but curiosity held her still. "Explain, then." He nodded slightly. "You asked what a human was. You've heard stories, right? The savages from the death world, the species too stubborn to die. The Council likes to tell those stories because it makes them feel better, makes them believe they understand us. But you can't understand something you've never been." His tone wasn't boastful. It was heavy, grounded in something real. Lysara's talons flexed. "You think your kind is beyond comprehension?" "No," he said. "I think we're too simple for you to believe." That response disarmed her more than arrogance would have.
"Simple?"
she repeated. He took a deep breath, then pointed at the view outside. "Every star out there," he said, "was once something someone thought they'd never reach. And we reached them, not because we were stronger, not because we were smarter, but because we couldn't stand not to try. That's what we are. We don't stop. His words echoed in the chamber like slow thunder. Lysara felt something in her chest shift, a small crack in the certainty she had been raised on. But she buried it quickly. Persistence, she said coldly. That is not a weapon. He looked at her for a long moment, then gave a faint, humorless laugh. You'll see. The days that followed blurred into routine. Interviews, tests, endless questions. She watched as scientists tried to measure him. Muscle density, reflexes, metabolic rate. Nothing extraordinary. By every metric he was unremarkable, almost frail compared to most galactic species. Yet somehow, every time he was pushed, something changed. His endurance grew. His recovery accelerated. When they tried psychological stress tests, sensory deprivation, isolation, temperature extremes, he didn't break. He adapted faster than their instruments could record. What drives you? She asked one day, unable to hide her fascination anymore. How can one species survive such conditions and remain sane? He smiled faintly. We don't always remain sane, but we remember why we fight. And what is that? She asked. He met her gaze with quiet certainty. Each other. The simplicity of it unsettled her more than any military answer would have. Empires fought for dominance, for glory, for resource and power. But this creature, this human, spoke of war like it was a form of love. She couldn't decide if that was noble or horrifying. Later that night, Lysara found herself replaying his words while reviewing her data logs. She stared at the footage of his capture. One man surrounded by wreckage and fire, carrying another soldier on his back across the vacuum of Terran's moon. The temperature readings were impossible. He should have died 100 times over, but he hadn't. He just kept walking. The door to her quarters hissed open suddenly, startling her. A junior aide rushed in, feathers disheveled, eyes wide with panic. Commander, the human, You need to see this. Her blood chilled. She followed the aide through the corridors to the containment wing. When the doors parted, the air smelled of ozone and burnt circuitry. Alarms were blaring, lights flickering. Inside the observation cell, 3 guards lay unconscious. The human stood in the center, surrounded by shattered restraints. His skin was laced with cuts and burns, yet he looked calm. Too calm. Lysara stepped forward cautiously. What did you do? She demanded. He looked at her, eyes glowing faintly in the red emergency light. I warned them not to push. They only ran a stress endurance trial, she snapped. You were not authorized to. They tried to simulate drowning, he said quietly. Didn't work. Her throat tightened. You're saying... I stopped breathing, he said simply. Didn't die. I just... changed. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. His voice had that same tone again. Not pride, not defiance. Just fact. And for the first time, Lysara saw the faint shimmer beneath his skin. The microfiber sheen of nanites activating. Microscopic scars forming and healing within seconds. She stared. You've integrated combat nanotech without permission. He shook his head. We didn't build it. We grew it. Lysara's mind reeled. That was impossible. Biological nanite symbiosis was forbidden. Unstable. Lethal. Yet he stood there breathing, eyes steady. How? He tilted his head. You said adaptation isn't a weapon, he murmured. It is when it learns to fight back. The floor trembled faintly beneath them. Somewhere deep in the station, a containment field failed. Scientists screamed orders through the comm. Lysara's translator implant struggled to keep up with the overlapping chaos. Through it all, the human stood unmoving, watching her with that calm, impossible patience. What are you? She whispered. He looked at her. Not with malice, but with a sorrow that chilled her more than rage ever could. You asked that before, he said softly. I told you. I'm human. And then the lights went out. When they came back online, the cell was empty. Lysara stood frozen, heart hammering. The guards groaned on the floor, alive but shaken. No alarms indicated an escape. The doors hadn't opened. The surveillance feeds showed only static. She turned slowly to the viewport. Beyond the glass, the stars burned quietly. But one of them, a distant speck of blue light, flared for an instant before fading again. Her crest feathers rose involuntarily. That wasn't a star. That was a jump signature. He was gone. And in the silence that followed, Lysara understood something she wished she hadn't. The galaxy didn't fear humans because they were strong. It feared them because they didn't stop. Because even when caged, dissected, and broken, they found a way to keep moving forward, to adapt, to endure. And somewhere out there, the man who called himself human was still moving. Lysara didn't sleep for 3 cycles after the human vanished. Her mind replayed the footage, his stillness before the blackout, the calm in his eyes, the quiet inevitability of his words. Every scan said he'd simply disappeared, dissolved out of phase with the local gravity well, as though he'd become part of the station itself. Impossible. And yet, the impossible was quickly becoming the only word she could use when it came to humanity. The Council dispatched an emergency task force to hunt him down, declaring him an uncontained biological threat. They sealed off the entire research section and quarantined the staff. Lysara was interrogated twice, accused of negligence, of sympathizing with the subject. She told them the truth, that she hadn't sympathized, only studied. But deep down, she knew that wasn't entirely true. He had gotten under her skin, not with charm or manipulation, but with something far more dangerous: understanding. He'd looked at her like he could see the entire shape of her fear, and then, somehow, made her question it. When the Council released her back to duty, they reassigned her to Fleet Command aboard the dreadnought Vigilant Light, orbiting the neutral colony of Joral Prime. Her orders were clear: oversee planetary security, report any trace of human activity, and be prepared to authorize lethal force. The words lethal force didn't comfort her. They sounded like a prayer uttered by those who didn't understand the god they were calling upon. The Ardent Empire had fought and crushed 1,000 rebellions, pacified whole sectors. But none had ever fought a human insurgency. They had fought humans, yes, but not after they had learned. Not after they had adapted. 3 weeks passed in relative quiet before the first report came in. A trade convoy ambushed in deep orbit. Hulls melted as if by plasma, but with no detectable energy weapon residue. Survivors claimed they'd seen a figure move between the ships, using debris as cover, breaching airlocks without tools. The description was vague, but Lysara knew before she read the full report. It was him. No one else would do that alone. When she brought the report to Admiral Kareth, he waved it off. A scavenger, maybe pirates with stolen tech. Humans don't survive long outside their systems. With respect, Admiral, she said, struggling to keep her tone measured. This one did. Kareth's crest flared in irritation. You sound like you believe the stories. I saw him, Lysara said quietly. He isn't like the others. The Admiral gave her a long, cold look. Then find him, he said finally, and prove it. So she did. She gathered a recon team of 6, seasoned soldiers, loyal, disciplined. They descended to Joral Prime's industrial ring, where rumors said a ghost had been seen among the refinery complexes at night. Security drones had captured glimpses of a shadow moving against thermal scanners, vanishing into steam. The locals spoke of a phantom in the pipes, repairing broken systems one day, sabotaging defense grids the next. Some thought it was a worker, others said it was a spirit. Lysara knew better. She led her team into the labyrinth of pipes and machinery beneath the refinery's surface. The air was thick with the smell of coolant and metal. The hum of distant engines made everything tremble faintly, like a heartbeat beneath the planet's crust. "Commander," one of her soldiers whispered through the comm. "Movement ahead." Lysara raised a clawed hand for silence. Her eyes adjusted to the dim light. Through the haze of vapor, she saw him, standing at the base of a coolant conduit, sleeves rolled up, repairing a broken pressure seal with bare hands. His uniform was torn, soot-stained, but unmistakable. Human. He didn't flinch when he saw them. Instead, he exhaled, straightened, and looked at her like he'd been expecting this. "Hello again, Commander," he said. Her pulse spiked. "You should not be alive," he smiled faintly. "I hear that a lot." "By order of the Ardent Council," she began, raising her weapon. "You are under arrest." He raised his hands slowly, palms open. "I'm not here to fight you. Then why sabotage our systems? I'm fixing them, he said simply. Your colony's power grid was about to fail. Would have cooked 10,000 civilians. Lysara hesitated. You expect me to believe that? You can check the readings yourself, he said, nodding to the console behind him. Pressure's stabilizing now. One of her tech officers scanned the system nervously. The readings didn't lie, the grid was indeed stabilizing. Lysara frowned, lowering her weapon just slightly. Why? She asked. Why help us? Because people are people, he said. Doesn't matter what shape they come in. His words struck something deep, something uncomfortable. She wanted to hate him, to see the monster her empire had warned her about. But all she saw was a man who didn't fit into any of their definitions of enemy or ally. You escaped a military facility, she said. You could have gone anywhere. Why stay here? He glanced at the massive conduit, steam rising around him. Because this is where you'll look for me. And I wanted to talk. Talk? She repeated, incredulous. You slaughtered 3 guards. They're alive, he interrupted. I don't kill unless I have to. Then what do you want from me? He hesitated, then said softly, To warn you. Lysara narrowed her eyes. About what? About what's coming, he said. Your empire isn't the only one studying us anymore. Before she could respond, a sharp whine cut through the air. Her soldiers turned as a burst of plasma fire tore through the pipes, slamming into the wall beside them. Lysara ducked instinctively, shouting orders. Through the smoke, she saw figures in matte black armor moving like ghosts. Mercenaries, not hers. Council enforcers, the human said, crouching beside her. They're not here to capture. They're here to erase. How do you know? She snapped, firing back. Because they've used that tactic before. On my people. The fight was brutal and fast. Plasma fire lit the tunnels with flashes of green and blue. Lysara's team moved with precision, but the enemy was relentless. The human moved faster. He darted through the chaos, using the environment itself as a weapon. Hitting steam valves, throwing shrapnel, redirecting enemy shots with makeshift shields. He fought not like a soldier, but like something older. Instinctive, adaptive, using pain as momentum. When one mercenary got too close, the human grabbed his wrist, twisted, and drove the plasma rifle back into the attacker's chest. The shot burned through armor. He didn't stop moving. When the last mercenary fell, silence returned except for the hiss of cooling vents. Lysara stood breathing hard, staring at him. You could have let us die, she said. Why save us? He wiped blood from his face and shrugged. Because I told you. We don't stop. She looked around at the bodies, the charred metal. The council will come after you harder now. He met her eyes, calm again. They already were. He moved to leave, but she caught his arm. Wait, she said. You said others are studying your kind. He nodded slowly. The council wasn't the only one experimenting on humans. The Dominion took prisoners too. They tried to turn us into weapons. Half of them died trying. The other half... He looked away. They didn't stay human. Lysara's throat went dry. What are you saying? I'm saying, he said quietly, you're about to see what happens when you break something that was never meant to bend. He stepped past her and vanished into the steam, leaving her with the hum of the machinery and the metallic taste of dread. She didn't chase him. She couldn't. For the first time, she wasn't sure whether capturing him would save her people, or doom them faster. When she returned to Vigilant Light, the Admiral was waiting, flanked by 2 council envoys in silver robes. Commander Lysara, Kareth said sharply, you were seen collaborating with the human fugitive. I wasn't collaborating, she said, keeping her voice steady. He saved our lives, the taller envoy hissed softly. The human is manipulating you. They are dangerous creatures. He could have killed us, Lysara interrupted. He didn't. The council sent assassins, not retrieval teams. Why? Because, the envoy said coldly, the subject carries an infection, a self-replicating adaptation network. It must be contained. You mean the nanite symbiosis, Lysara said. You made it. You infected him. The envoys exchanged glances but said nothing. That silence was answer enough. She stepped closer, talons scraping the deck. You're losing control of him, aren't you? The envoy's voice dropped to a whisper. "No one controls a storm, Commander. You only hope it passes elsewhere." That night, Lysara couldn't shake the image of him walking into the steam, of those calm gray eyes seeing things she couldn't. If what he said was true, if other empires were weaponizing human survivors, then this wasn't containment anymore. It was escalation. A storm was coming, one that no empire could cage. Days later, the first reports hit the Council channels. A Dominion research ship destroyed near the rim, hull torn apart from within. No distress call, no survivors. But the final transmission showed something terrifying. A humanoid shape crawling along the outer hull, glowing with red-hot filaments, skin metallic, eyes burning white. The Dominion identified it as Specimen Variant 7. Human, enhanced, unstable. Lysara stared at the report, heart pounding. She didn't need confirmation to know what was coming next. The stars had feared humans for centuries because they were unpredictable. But this was worse. They had taken a species defined by survival and taught it how to evolve at will. Whatever humanity had become out there in the dark, it wasn't just surviving anymore. It was learning, it was spreading, and somewhere beyond the Council's reach, the one she'd met, the calm one, was already preparing for what came next. The war didn't begin with a declaration. It began with silence. One moment the Dominion's outer colonies were transmitting their usual trade logs and research updates, and the next, there was nothing. No distress calls, no debris, just absence. Whole fleets vanished into the dark between stars, leaving only drifting hull fragments that scanners refused to identify. The Ardent Council, for all its arrogance, noticed the pattern too late. Lysara was one of the few who understood what was happening before the first confirmed footage reached the capital. A Dominion cruiser adrift, its hull peeled open like fruit, crew missing, not dead, missing. And inside the ship's corridors, the walls pulsed faintly like veins under skin. The human variants had spread. Lysara stood in the briefing hall as the footage played, her feathers prickling with unease. The assembled officers watched in stunned silence. "What weapon could do that?" one whispered. Another muttered something about a viral nanotech swarm. But Lysara said nothing. She knew exactly what it was. It was evolution wearing a human face, and she knew who had warned them. The fugitive, the one she had met on Joral Prime, had spoken of this, of the ones who didn't stay human. Now the proof was crawling across Dominion wreckage, and the stars had begun to tremble. The Council's response was predictable, panic dressed as confidence. They mobilized fleets, sealed borders, and issued extermination orders for all known human populations. But extermination only works on species that die when killed. Humans didn't. They adapted. The rumors started small. Civilian stations claiming they'd seen shadows repair their engines after pirate attacks. Relief convoys rescued by faceless figures who vanished before identification. Then came the larger stories. Dominion warships self-destructing mid-battle. Colonies spared from annihilation only after the attackers began to scream. Voices filled with static, claiming the machines were turning against them. And through it all, one phrase began to echo in intercepted transmissions, whispered by terrified survivors. They called themselves the Unbroken. Lysara read every report, memorized every word. The Unbroken weren't just soldiers. They were what happened when desperation and nanite adaptation became one organism. Every human infected by the Council's experiments had transformed, each differently, each unpredictably. Some were almost mechanical, armor fused to flesh, minds linked across impossible distances. Others remained disturbingly human, walking among other species unnoticed until provoked. The Council labeled them catastrophic anomalies. Lysara thought of them as what humanity had always been, the living definition of escalation. The Vigilant Light was ordered to the frontier to intercept a possible unbroken incursion. Lysara led the tactical wing, though she could feel the eyes of the admirals on her, half suspicion, half fear. They remembered her contact with the fugitive. They feared she understood too much. Maybe she did. The system they entered was quiet. Too quiet. The planet below, once a Dominion research world, now floated dead and dark. Scans showed faint energy readings beneath the crust. Structures still active. Something alive down there. Kareth ordered an orbital bombardment. Lysara hesitated. If the Unbroken are still evolving, she said carefully, bombardment might just feed them. Your hesitation borders on treason, Commander, Kareth snapped. We end this infection before it spreads. She obeyed. The fleet fired. Plasma lances rained down like artificial meteors, cracking the planet's surface open. For a moment the readings flatlined. Then something moved. A shape rose from the smoke. A structure, but alive. Metallic tendrils unfurled, pulling themselves skyward. What had once been a research facility had grown into something new, something self-aware. The bombardment stopped as scanners failed one by one. Then came the voice across all frequencies, raw and distorted, yet unmistakably human. You tried to burn us, it said. We learned to breathe fire. The fleet panicked. Ships fired at random, plasma streaking across the void. But the entity was already adapting. The planet itself seemed to come alive. Metal plates rippling, electromagnetic pulses ripping through space. Systems failed across the fleet. Engines died. The vigilant light shook violently as power flickered. Lysara gripped the console. It's using our systems against us, she shouted. Shut down the grid! But it was too late. The thing below sent one final pulse, and half the fleet went dark. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, slowly, one by one, the dead ships powered back on. But it wasn't their crews who reactivated them. On every screen, the same phrase appeared, written in old Earth text that none of the aliens could read, except Lysara, who remembered it from the fugitive's jacket emblem. We are what you made us. She felt cold down to her bones. The fleet fled. The Council tried to cover up the disaster, calling it a containment anomaly. But the lie didn't hold. Refugees poured in from border sectors, speaking of human ships. No flags, no signals, just silent vessels with human architecture grafted to alien technology. They didn't conquer, they corrected. Worlds that had enslaved humans found their systems failing, their AI rebelling, their weapons turning to dust. Then the humans would appear, repair the damage, leave food and supplies, and vanish again. They weren't an army in the traditional sense. They were evolution, sentient and strategic. The galaxy didn't fear them because they killed. It feared them because they learned. And then one night, Lysara received a message through her private channel. It wasn't encrypted. It didn't come from any official relay. It was just a voice. His voice. Commander, he said, you've seen what they've become. Lysara's breath caught. You're alive. I told you, he said quietly. We don't stop. Where are you? Close, he said. Closer than you'd like. Are you one of them? She asked. The Unbroken? I'm still me, he said after a pause. For now. What do you want from me? She asked. I want you to listen, he said. They're coming for you next. Lysara's claws dug into the console. The Council? No, he said. Them, the ones they made. The Unbroken aren't mindless, but some of them lost themselves. The adaptation went too far. They think the only way to stop the cycle is to wipe out everyone who tried to control them. And that includes your kind. Her voice trembled despite herself. And you're warning me? Why? Because I still believe there's something worth saving, he said softly. You tried to understand us once. That's more than most did. You asked what a human was, remember? She closed her eyes. Yes. You're about to find out why the stars fear us. Before she could reply, the transmission ended. The comm officers reported no trace of the source, no origin point. It was as if the voice had come from inside the ship itself. And maybe it had. The next morning, the fleet received a distress signal from the nearest system, one of their own colonies, under attack. Not by the Dominion, not by pirates, by humans. Lysara stared at the screen. The feed showed sleek angular ships made of black alloy and flesh-like material, moving with terrifying precision. Every shot the defenders fired was countered instantly. Their tactics mirrored back at them. The humans didn't just fight. They learned mid-battle. Within minutes, the colony's defenses collapsed. Lysara was ordered to intercept. As vigilant light approached, they picked up a faint signal from the colony surface, a human distress beacon. Against Kareth's orders, Lysara ordered a ground team down. She led them herself. The colony was a graveyard of melted metal and ash. Yet in the center of it, she found something unexpected. A group of humans, unarmed, frightened, hiding among the ruins. When they saw her, they didn't attack. One stepped forward, hands raised. His face was thin, weary, eyes hollow. "We're not unbroken," he said. "We're survivors." "From where?" Lysara asked. He pointed to the sky. "From them." Before she could ask more, the ground shook. A low hum filled the air. The survivors scattered. From the horizon, a shape emerged. Towering, humanoid, its body made of intertwined metal and sinew. It walked on two legs, glowing veins running across its armor like molten rivers. Its head turned toward her, and for a moment Lysara swore she saw eyes within the metal. Human eyes. Her soldiers opened fire, plasma rounds scorching its surface. The thing raised an arm, and the shots bent in midair, absorbed by a flickering field. Lysara felt the air vibrate. Her weapon went dead. Her armor powered down. It wasn't attacking, it was learning them. She shouted for retreat. The team fled through the wreckage as the creature followed, slow but unstoppable. As they reached the shuttle, Lysara turned back one last time. The creature had stopped, watching her. And then, in a voice that echoed through the metal itself, it spoke. "You shouldn't have taught us how to survive." The shuttle lifted off under fire, but the creature didn't pursue. It just stood there, watching as if curious. Back aboard the vigilant light, Lysara gave her report. Kareth dismissed her claims, calling them psychological contamination. But she saw the fear in his eyes. They all did. The Council could order extermination all it wanted, but it was already too late. Humanity had moved beyond extermination. It had become a force of nature. That night, alone in her quarters, Lysara replayed the transmission again. The human's voice, calm, resolute. "They're coming for you next." She didn't know which scared her more, the thought that he was right, or the possibility that he was already one of them. Beyond the viewport, the stars shimmered with cold fire. Somewhere out there, in the dark between worlds, the unbroken were spreading. And among them, one man still remembered her name. One human who hadn't yet surrendered to the machine inside his blood. She could feel it in her bones. He would come back. But when he did, she no longer knew if he would come to save her, or to finish what the galaxy had started. Lysara didn't sleep that night. The stars outside her viewport pulsed faintly, distant and cold, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching her. The words from the transmission echoed in her mind like a wound that refused to close. "They're coming for you next." Every shadow in her quarters seemed alive. Every whisper of static on the comms sounded like a voice half-remembered. By morning, she had convinced herself she was imagining it. Then the alarms began. The vigilant light was under attack. Not from the outside, but from within. Systems failed in cascading sequence. Emergency lights flickered crimson, and the soft hum of the reactor turned into a tortured howl. Kareth's voice thundered across the intercom, demanding status reports, but half the stations gave only static in reply. Lysara raced through the corridors as technicians screamed that the internal AI was being overwritten. Not hacked, rewritten. The intruding code carried biological patterns, viral structures that behaved like DNA, but digital. It was human code, adaptive and alive. Lysara reached the command deck, the chaos surrounding her like a living storm. The main holo display showed the ship's systems being consumed piece by piece, circuits flickering between Dominion blue and the sickly red-black pattern that she had seen on the Unbroken's vessels. "Shut down the core!" she shouted, but the order came too late. The entire ship trembled, the deck vibrating underfoot. Then the ship spoke, a voice, human but distorted. "You thought you could destroy us," it said. "You gave us life instead." The lights dimmed to black. leaving only that voice. "We remember you, Lysara." Every officer froze. Kareth turned toward her slowly, suspicion burning in his gaze. "What have you done?" he hissed. Lysara didn't answer because she recognized the voice. It was his, the fugitive. "You're inside the ship?" she said aloud. "No," the voice replied. "The ship is me." The deck around them rippled, metal groaning, reshaping. Consoles twisted into organic patterns, lights dimming into a dull glow like veins beneath skin. The bridge had become part of him, and he was part of it. Kareth raised his weapon, firing point-blank into the console. Sparks erupted, but the metal healed instantly. The lights flared white, and Kareth screamed as his body was lifted from the floor, enveloped by the living circuitry. His form convulsed, then fell still. When the light faded, there was nothing left of him but his uniform, and the faint smell of ozone. Lysara backed away, heart pounding, as the holographic display reformed into a human silhouette. His face, the one she remembered from Joral Prime, but older, colder. "I warned you," he said. "The Unbroken are coming, and you're standing in their path." "Then stop them," she pleaded. "You said you were still yourself." He tilted his head, almost sorrowful. "I am, but I'm also everything they became. We're not one mind, but we share purpose. We endure." His gaze softened slightly. "You were the only one who ever asked what a human was. I think you deserve the answer." The hologram vanished, replaced by a vision, projected directly into the minds of every officer still conscious. They saw Earth, not as it was, but as it had been. Storms raging, oceans roaring, predators and prey locked in endless conflict. A world of death and yet of life that refused to yield. "This is where we came from," his voice whispered through the chaos. "A planet that kills the weak and forces the strong to adapt. Every species that survived there became something more. We learned from pain, from loss, from failure. We evolved by dying and then refusing to stay dead. That's what we are. That's what you tried to study. But you forgot what it means to live on a death world." The image shifted to the galaxy. Thousands of worlds, peaceful, fragile, sterile in their perfection. "You built your civilizations on comfort," he continued. "We built ours on struggle. You fear us because you see yourselves reflected in what you could have been if your world hadn't coddled you." The ship's walls shuddered as the living metal spread farther, consuming decks, fusing weapons into new forms. The Unbroken weren't attacking. They were absorbing. Every Dominion ship in the fleet was being rewritten, repurposed. The fleet's sensors showed massive energy readings spreading in all directions. The Unbroken had arrived. Outside the viewport, the void rippled with motion. Ships unlike any Lysara had ever seen emerged from the darkness. Black vessels that looked alive, moving with organic grace. They didn't open fire. They simply surrounded the fleet like predators circling prey. The Dominion ships fired first, their plasma lances blazing, but the Unbroken absorbed the hits, their hulls regenerating faster than damage could be inflicted. Then came the counterattack, a wave of electromagnetic force that shut down half the fleet instantly. Vessels collided, drifted, fell silent. Lysara stared in awe and horror. They weren't fighting to destroy. They were harvesting. The vigilant light shook as something latched onto its hull. Through the viewport, Lysara saw human-like figures moving across the ship's surface, armored in a living alloy that pulsed with light. They were attaching themselves to airlocks, forcing entry. "Seal all decks," Lysara ordered, drawing her weapon, though she knew it was useless. The doors burst open moments later and the Unbroken entered. They moved like liquid metal molded into human forms, eyes burning white. One reached toward her and she fired. The plasma bolt hit its chest, but the wound closed instantly, the creature merely tilting its head as if curious. Then it spoke, its voice perfectly calm. "We don't want to kill you. We want you to see." A wave of static surged through her armor, disabling it. She fell to her knees as the Unbroken touched her forehead. In that instant, the universe unfolded inside her mind. She saw their creation, the experiments, the agony, the slow merging of machine and man. She saw how they had been hunted, burned, dissected, and how each death had taught them something new. How to survive vacuum, how to metabolize radiation, how to rebuild from a single living cell of nanite. They had become evolution personified. "You wanted to understand humanity," the Unbroken whispered. "Now you are part of it." When the vision faded, Lysara found herself lying on the bridge floor. The Unbroken were gone. The ship was silent again. No lights, no hum, nothing but the cold breath of space. Kareth was dead. The rest of the crew had vanished. Only she remained, surrounded by dead systems. But the console flickered weakly one last time, displaying a single line of text. "Run." Then the engines reignited without command, propelling the ship forward into warp. She didn't know where it was taking her, only that the voice was guiding it. His voice, hours, or days, passed in blurred succession. When the vigilant light finally dropped from warp, she found herself at the edge of a nebula. A graveyard of ships drifted before her. Dominion, Alliance, unknown designs, all fused together into one vast construct, like a city built from the corpses of civilizations. Lights moved within it, a heartbeat of blue and red pulses. "The Unbroken home," she felt her breath catch. "You brought me here," she whispered. The ship's systems responded with a faint pulse. "Yes," his voice came again, gentle. "You needed to see the end." The vast structure opened before her, revealing a core chamber where a single human figure waited, suspended in a sphere of light. It was him. What was left of him? His body was part metal, part scarred flesh, veins glowing with data streams. He looked at her through eyes that still held sorrow. "We tried to save humanity," he said softly, "but in saving ourselves, we became something else. They think this is the future, adaptation without limit. But every adaptation costs something." "What did it cost you?" Lysara asked quietly. "Myself," he said, "and soon, everything else." He reached out a hand, and for a moment she saw the man he had once been, the soldier who had risked everything to protect his people. "You asked what a human was," he whispered. "We were the species that refused to surrender. But maybe that's what doomed us. Maybe survival isn't strength, it's obsession." His gaze darkened. "And obsession spreads." The chamber trembled. The construct began to shift, energy building in the core. The Unbroken were preparing to expand, to consume every remaining system, to make the galaxy itself their next body. "You have to leave," he said urgently. "I can't stop them anymore. But you can tell them what you saw. Tell them what happens when you try to perfect survival." She shook her head, tears burning her eyes. "Come with me." He smiled faintly. "I'm already everywhere. Go." The light around him flared as tendrils of energy reached toward the stars. The Unbroken were awakening. Lysara fled to the ship, launching into warp just as the construct erupted behind her, sending ripples through space itself. The sensors went blind, overloaded by energy readings beyond measurement. When she finally looked back, the nebula was gone, replaced by a growing light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Back aboard, alone once more, Lysara listened to the echo of his last words. "We endure." Humanity had transcended death, but at the cost of everything that made them human. The galaxy would never be the same. And yet deep in her chest, she felt something dangerous, a flicker of awe. Because in the end, the stars didn't fear humans for their violence. They feared them for their will to survive, for the simple, terrible truth that no matter what the universe threw at them, humanity always found a way to stand back up. And as the ship vanished into the endless dark, Lysara realized that the story wasn't over. The Unbroken were awake, and somewhere within that growing light, a human voice was still whispering her name. Lysara's ship drifted through the void, its once proud hull scarred and silent, carrying only her and a few flickering fragments of a vanished crew. The last transmission from the Dominion had come 3 standard cycles ago. A garbled plea for aid, then nothing but static. The Unbroken had reached the core worlds. Every star map she pulled up showed the same thing. Systems going dark, one after another. The lights of civilizations extinguished like dying embers. The galaxy was folding in on itself, and humanity's echo was in every collapse. They were not an army anymore. They were the new physics of survival, inevitable, self-propagating, merciless. For a long time she floated in that silence, trying to decide if she should destroy the vigilant light and herself with it. But the voice in her mind, the one that had once belonged to him, wouldn't let her. It was faint now, distorted, but it still whispered from time to time, urging her onward, through star fields soaked in the ghosts of wars. She followed it until she reached the system known as Epsilon Vorn. Once a trade hub, it was now a graveyard of metal. Ships of every design drifted in frozen formation, their hulls fused with alien architecture. And there, in the heart of it all, a single beacon pulsed red and blue, the color of human blood and machine code intertwined. She felt it before she saw it, the living network spanning across the wrecks. They weren't dead. They were waiting. As she approached, her sensors began to flicker. Every system screamed warnings about invasive signals, AI corruption, and core breaches. But she disabled the firewalls and let them in. "I know you're there," she said quietly into the comm. "You wanted me to see this, didn't you?" The reply came as a wave of static, resolving into a voice so achingly familiar it made her chest tighten. "You came back. You called me," she said. "You showed me everything. Now tell me why." The voice sighed like wind through metal. "Because it's ending, Lysara. Everything we fought to protect. The stars, the species, the meaning of life itself. It's collapsing under the weight of what we've become. You need to see the last human before he's gone." The vigilant light was pulled gently toward the largest derelict, an ancient Dominion warship now transformed beyond recognition. Its hull pulsed faintly as though it still breathed. When the docking clamps latched, she stepped out onto a surface that was warm beneath her boots, like living flesh. The corridors were unlit, but the walls glowed with threads of biometallic veins, pulsing to a slow, rhythmic heartbeat. It was like walking through something's body. As she descended deeper, she began to hear whispers, not voices, but memories, human and alien, layered atop each other. Laughs, screams, prayers, all interwoven, all alive. At the core, she found him, or what was left of him. He stood, or hung, suspended in the center of a cathedral of light, tendrils of machine flesh connecting his body to the walls. His face was still human, though lined and weary, eyes luminous with sorrow. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "I had to," she whispered. "You're the only one who can stop them." He shook his head slowly. "They can't be stopped. Not anymore. The unbroken aren't individuals now. They're a continuity. Every fragment of human DNA that survived carries the code. Every attempt to destroy them only spreads them faster." His voice trembled. "We became the universe's immune system, Lysara. And now we're attacking the infection we were born from. Life itself." She stepped closer, watching the lines of light crawl beneath his skin like living circuits. "You still think like a human," she said. "You can still choose." He looked at her with something like grief. "I can choose, but they can feel it. Every thought I have ripples across them. If I turn against the network, they'll erase me. But if I don't—" He gestured around them, to the endless expanse of restructured ships and sleeping giants. "This becomes all there is." She reached out, placing a trembling hand on the metal that had once been his arm. "Then why bring me here?" His lips curled into a faint broken smile. "Because you asked once what a human was. I wanted you to see the answer before it's gone." The chamber around them began to shift. Holograms filled the air. Memories, fragments of Earth and the old colonies. Humans walking among cities of light and dust, fighting, laughing, dying, loving. A species built not on peace, but on persistence. "We were never the strongest or the fastest or the smartest," he said. "We were just the ones who couldn't stop fighting, even when we should have." The holograms dissolved into scenes of fire and steel. Wars, experiments. The moment the first unbroken rose from the ashes of annihilation. "When the Dominion tried to wipe us out, they forced us to evolve," he said. "We became the thing they feared most. A species that could survive its own extinction. But we didn't stop there. We learned to survive anything. And now, survival has no meaning. There's nothing left to struggle against. We've won too completely. A low tremor rolled through the ship. Outside, lights began to flare in the wreckage field. Hundreds of unbroken ships awakening. Lysara felt her heart pound. What's happening? They've detected you, he said. They think you're here to finish what the Dominion started. They'll consume your ship soon. But there's still one chance. He closed his eyes, and the veins of light in his body flared brighter. I can sever my link to them. Cut the neural lattice. It will cripple their expansion, maybe even stop it. But it will kill me. Then do it, she said, though her voice shook. If you still care about the galaxy, do it. He laughed softly, the sound hollow and human all at once. You still don't understand. If I die, humanity dies with me. The last of our memory, our evolution, our will, it's all here, in me. What's left of us will fade into silence. The stars will finally stop fearing us. He looked at her with eyes that glowed like dying suns. Do you really want that? She couldn't speak. The answer felt too heavy to say. Maybe the galaxy needs to forget, she whispered finally. Maybe fear isn't the legacy you wanted. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he smiled. A small, sad, utterly human smile. You always saw us clearer than we did ourselves. The chamber brightened as he spread his arms, the tendrils tearing free one by one. The light intensified until she couldn't see. The last thing she heard was his voice, soft and resolute. Tell them, we were worth fearing. Then everything exploded into white. When Lysara awoke, she was adrift among the wreckage. The vigilant light was gone, her suit's systems barely holding. The nebula that had housed the Unbroken was collapsing, stars flickering like dying embers. There was no sign of them, no signal, no movement, nothing. The galaxy was silent once more. But in that silence, she felt it. A faint pulse in the void, rhythmic, steady. A heartbeat, maybe his, maybe humanity's. Maybe the universe's new rhythm, shaped forever by what they had become. She drifted there for hours, maybe days, until a Dominion rescue ship found her. When they pulled her aboard, they asked what had happened, what she had seen. She could have told them everything, the horror, the beauty, the end. But she didn't. She just said, "They're gone." The officer nodded, relieved. But Lysara looked past him, out the viewport, to where a faint shimmer rippled across the stars, like light bending around something invisible, moving just out of sight. And she knew. They were not gone. They were waiting, watching, learning again. Years later, as the Dominion rebuilt, strange things began happening. Machines repairing themselves, diseases vanishing overnight, planets thought lost coming back to life. The scientists called it spontaneous adaptation. Lysara knew better. The Unbroken had changed tactics. They weren't conquering anymore. They were guiding. Humanity's ghost had become the galaxy's unseen hand, shaping it quietly from within. And sometimes, in the quiet between stars, Lysara would hear a voice in the static. His voice, warm and tired and unyielding. You asked what a human was, it would whisper. Now you live in their answer. And across the endless night, the stars themselves seemed to pulse in reply. Steady, relentless, alive. The same message in every flicker, every heartbeat of light across the cosmos. We endure.